We welcome on probably the best conservative YouTuber of all time. I'm not even kidding when I said that. A guy that really gave me my big break, a guy that I'm indebted to, helped build my channel. My channel wouldn't be what it is today, and I wouldn't be here what I'm doing, and I don't even know what the hell that is, but I wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't for this man. Welcome on Mark Dice. Mark, what's happening, my man?
Thanks for having me. You know, I thought by now you would have gotten fired or canceled or banned, not because the show isn't good, but just sometimes it's a little bit too good. So I'm glad to be here while the show lasts.
Yes, and you know that the shelf life on this thing is not super long. Okay, but let's get right into it because I know you're busy and I want to get great reaction clips because I got to use you for clout, Mark. I've been using you for clout for the past 3 years. I cannot stop now. So I need you, Mark. I need you. But listen, I stirred up a bunch of controversy for asking presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy about 9/11 and his answer just, Brett Baier, Fox News, just government transparency. It pissed off everybody that actually believes the official story or if they actually believe it. So I want to play this clip and then I want to get your reaction. So we need a partner. Okay, rapid fire question. Was the moon landing real or fake, Vivek?
Was the what, moon landing?
Real or fake?
I have no evidence to suggest it was fake, so I'm gonna assume it was real.
Okay, 9/11, inside job or exactly how the government tells us?
I don't believe the government has told us the truth. Again, I'm driven by evidence and data. What I've seen in the last several years is we have to be skeptical of what the government does tell us. I haven't seen evidence to the contrary, but do I believe everything the government told us about it? Absolutely not.
Last two questions.
The 9/11 Commission? Absolutely not.
Yeah, 9/11 Commission lied. Last two questions. So you'll see that Mike Pence actually called that comment, which I thought was pretty middle of the road, disgusting. And it's caused a meltdown. So what is your response to all this, Mark?
I thought his response was somewhat diplomatic because only an idiot would believe the official story. And he's got to be careful. Sometimes when you're in that position, you don't want to ask too many questions. It would have been nice if he would have thrown out an Operation Northwoods plug or encouraged people to kind of look at that. But, you know, he might not even know about that. But Mike Pence called him out for that, for not believing the official story.
Yes, they're fighting on Twitter like crazy. I don't know if we have the Mike Pence.
I saw the clip went viral. And he was getting pressure about it. Even for that, you know, Brett Baier was hassling him about it. But the fact that Mike Pence denounced him, Mike Pence is a joke. You saw that Mike Pence doesn't even know how to pump gas. Doesn't know how to wear.
We got that clip right here. Yeah, look at this.
Remember $2 a gallon gas? I do. And then Joe Biden became president of the United States and launched his war on energy. Since that time, gasoline prices are up 60%. Electricity prices are up 25%. Joe Biden's war on energy is causing real hardship for working families, small businesses, and family farms. But we've got a plan to relieve all of that.
Your thoughts?
Better find a plan how to pump gas. You know, and find a new videographer, too. I mentioned this in my video that I posted today. He's wearing a lavalier microphone, which you don't even need, in the wrong spot. Like, who wears a microphone? You notice that right in the middle of his shirt. So Mike Pence is a joke. The fact that he's even running, that he thinks he can become the president is just a joke. He barely made the debate, which is 2 weeks from today. So there's a threshold that's very, very low. They have to get a certain percentage in some polls, a certain number of donations from people in various different states. So he actually barely made the cutoff. So the fact that this dude actually thinks he's going to run for president or could become president or be the VP of whoever he thinks is going to be the nominee is just an absolute joke. Oh, by the way, back to Vivek Ramaswamy. Did you press Vivek about Operation Mockingbird? Because you know you can't have me on your show. You can't have a conversation with me without talking about Operation Mockingbird. And Robert F. Kennedy Jr., I don't know if you've had him on, but he has been ringing the alarm bell about it. And it's going over his host's heads. He was on Lex Friedman's podcast. He was always shoved in everybody's face on YouTube, the algorithm.
I don't want to cut you off. Why Lex Friedman is recommended to me all the time, and I purposely dislike it, and he still comes back. Sorry to cut you off, but keep going to your thoughts.
I think he's like the newest YouTube's new establishment, like kind of favorite it guy, like Mr. Beast. And so Robert F. Kennedy Jr. mentioned Operation Mockingbird on the show and mentioned it on Megyn Kelly's podcast. She's become a pretty big YouTuber now that she's not shackled by the corporate controllers of Fox News. And nobody is talking about Operation Mockingbird except for us crazy alternative YouTubers and RFK. So if if you have him on, and you can probably get that episode banned because she'll talk about vaccines.
Which are all safe and effective. We love every vaccine, Mark. Remember, they're so healthy for you. Get them as soon as fast as you can out of the womb. Sorry.
Yes, and the 9/11 Commission would never lie, and you should not Google Operation Northwoods or investigate false.
Well, let's talk about Operation Northwoods. So I just got to be on comedian icon Roseanne Barr's podcast, and we talked about 9/11, and she didn't even know. She knows about all these conspiracies, but she didn't realize Operation Northwoods was a plan during the Cuba Missile Crisis for us to false flag attack ourselves under the guise that a Cuban national hijacked a plane, flew it into buildings in Miami so that we could start a war with Cuba. And this is a plan that supposedly got shelved by JFK. And then conveniently, 40 years later, this basic same plan was the blueprint for 9/11. So a lot of people don't even know about that, Mark.
And not only that, but it was signed off by the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who were the heads of all of the military branches. So it's not like some crackpot just put this idea together to commit a false flag attack in order to justify going to war to Cuba or to, try to invade and take over get the Russians out of there during the Cuban Missile Crisis. But the fact that they put it on paper is one. It was approved by all of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So, at the time, this isn't even like ancient history. They literally approved committing a false flag attack in order to justify us getting into war, which is how most wars actually start. And Seymour Hersh said, and he's got pretty reliable sources, that the Bush administration wanted to commit a false flag in the Strait of Hormuz in order to blame Iran and paint up U-2 spy boats as Iranian boats, commit a false flag. And of course, we know about the weapons of mass destruction hoax that was concocted by the neocons. Most wars throughout history.
Gulf of Tonkin, Vietnam.
Gulf of Tonkin, Hitler invading Poland. So they have, it's a common military strategy. And so that's just a suspicious, they have put the plans to paper before. So I think it's great what you did with Vivek. Just make them uncomfortable because they're so protected that nobody's going to ask them these difficult questions, these politicians, these candidates. But because of the new media ecosystem, many of them, and Vivek especially is one of them, they're doing a lot of these alternative podcasts because they know that nobody tunes in to the mainstream media, and Fox News has dumped half of their audience or a third of their primetime audience. And so they know that to reach the general public, they have to go on podcasts. And so with you having the Blaze behind you, instead of just being a random YouTuber come on my show, the Blaze is a pretty decent brand name in conservative media. I think you should start putting their feet to the fire about Operation Mockingbird and things like that. And by the way, there is an event I don't mention. I'm not going to mention, but there's an event I told you to get a press pass for that's coming up still in a little while, but I think the cutoff is in a couple weeks. So you probably know what I'm talking about.
I'll mess you privately on Skype, and we'll discuss those plans.
If you're not there, I'm never going to talk to you again. And if you are there, I'm going to find out about it because you're going to trend on Twitter. So just have the producers ask you what it is that I'm talking about. And for the audience, if he gets into this event, it will be fantastic. I think will eclipse his meeting of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and trolling of some of these other stuff.
Nothing could beat AOC, Mark. You're one of the smartest guys I know, and even you know that nothing can beat my big booty Latina AOC. No, but on a more serious note, though, obviously we like to joke around and you love humor, but I'm starting to get very clown pilled. I'm starting to get losing a lot of hope with this Trump indictment. I love Trump, but I'm it's kind of almost hard to find humor now. I can lampoon anything, but I guess I don't think 2024 is going to be very good. I think it's actually going to be worse than the summer of love. I don't know how that's going to happen. I don't know when it's going to pop off, but I just foresee that there's going to be a chaotic thing with Biden either getting humiliated and then Trump's not going to be able to run. And I think we're going to have some sort of civil war possibly or something like that.
Wouldn't be a war, but no, I agree. I underneath the jokes and the smiles and the Brian Stelter voiceovers, I am very worried as well. We are in a collapsing society. There's no question about it. The national debt, the lack of patriotism amongst half of the country, the racial strife that's been stoked because of Black Lives Matter. It's going to be a big problem. And if he gets convicted and then the Supreme Court overrules it, there's going to be riots. Remember, we're sort of used to Antifa and Black Lives Matter rioting and destroying, large segments of different cities across the country. But remember, we never really had this until 2016 when Antifa and Black Lives Matter started rioting and attacking Trump supporters that were just leaving events. And that was when the kind of the violence from the left first started. We haven't experienced political violence in this country like that since the 1960s with like the Weather Underground and the riots at the DNC. And so I'm very concerned. We're living in Sodom and Gomorrah, basically, and I don't see any point, and I don't see any way for us to like turn the country around as a whole, at least for generations, because there's $250,000 national debt per taxpayer. That's per adult. The level of stupidity and ignorance, the atrazine poisoning or the BPA poisoning, the
Turning the frogs gay. That's the reference people don't realize, but the frogs actually are going gay. Sorry to cut you off, Mark.
And that's another thing too, that a lot of the conservatives, Matt Walsh has basically made his bones criticizing the transgender community, but he is only looking at it from one angle, which is the social contagion angle, which I think is probably very valid. But to my knowledge, he hasn't addressed the possible atrazine poisoning or BPA. And even though they've taken BPA, bisphenol A, out of much of the food packaging because it's been found to be an endocrine disruptor, synthetic estrogen, and even 10 years ago, they found that the synthetic estrogen can feminize boys in the womb. They even know the specific area of the brain, the INAH3 region of the hypothalamus, that's responsible for gender identity and sexual orientation. And it feminizes that part of the brain. So if these people are having massive birth defects because of synthetic estrogen and too much estrogen in the womb, and they're being born this way, that opens up a whole other can of worms about testosterone treatment or hormone treatment for, measuring the hormone treatments in the womb. And if some of these people have been victims of this kind of endocrine disrupting poison, that's a whole other level than just not accepting people's preferred pronouns or just kind of rejecting the transgender argument on its surface, because then there's a whole other problem at work here. And RFK mentioned this. I don't know if you saw this, but he mentioned it on, Jordan Peterson's podcast, and it went right over Jordan Peterson's head. He started mentioning about how, one of the major problems of the youth today is the endocrine disruptors. So it's a mess, man. I mean, like, that's why it's your job to, try to put a positive spin on this. But we are, I don't think there's any question, in a collapsing society, because, you look back, what is the Roman, remember the Roman Empire? What have they done to lead the world in anything since they collapsed? What was it? 1700 years ago? Nothing. The British Empire ruled the world. Their decline probably was around when we decided to break off and start this great country, 250 something years ago. When is Britain ever led the world in anything? So it's going to be a big problem, and the country's just in a fracture, and it is fracturing into basically two different camps, and then conservative enclaves within certain liberal states, and then you'll have the liberal wastelands of inner cities, even in conservative states. But then outside in the more, more rural areas or the kind of the smaller cities, under the 500,000 cities, they're going to have kind of a little bit of normalcy. But it's like we're fractioning into two different societies within the same country. And the differences in America are no longer like the Republican versus Democrat used to be, well, how do you stand on the death penalty? Tax cuts for the middle class. How do you feel about abortion? I mean, look at how insane it is. It's now the party of transgender children and abortion up until the moment a child is born versus a party of good old-fashioned Americans who, were basically, and the Republican Party is almost like what the Democrat Party was 10 years ago in a certain aspect. So it's going to be chaos, man. I don't think anybody has any answers, but whatever's going to happen, nobody really knows. I mean, it's just
no idea. But Mark, you said
buckle up.
You said the best thing, though. We talk about these endocrine disruptors where, you're right. Maybe these kids, maybe we need gender-affirming care for the kid that didn't have enough testosterone. Maybe we need to give boys more testosterone at a young age. Like maybe that's a reverse application of what we need, because we've given them so much chemicals, and we are eating all these foods with genetically modified stuff with all these phytoestrogens. Maybe we actually, it's not just a libs of TikTok teacher saying, oh, let me put a pride flag. Maybe these kids' endocrine systems are so messed up, like you said, the parts of their brain are disrupted, and now they're homosexual or transgender. So, I mean, that's a big problem nobody talks about.
They don't. And in her book, Dr. Deborah So, in her book, The End of Gender, she's kind of an old-fashioned liberal, not a leftist authoritarian, but she's against all the wokeness, and she says at the very end of her book, she cites research. She does like a PhD and stuff, so she cites research about how they've done tests in animals where they can literally make the offspring of rats gay.
And they had a gay bomb. Yeah. What about the gay bomb, Mark?
Yeah, that's another extension of that kind of technology where they literally can up the estrogen level in a rat's womb and make the rats gay. And so if that's happening to rats, they test, obviously a lot of products and chemicals on rats because sometimes some of the biological systems are similar to found in humans. And so if that's the case, and she even admits that opens up an ethical can of worms, because if they know, which it appears that they do, what's causing people to be gay or transgender, then by saying that it's a birth defect, which you're not supposed to say, which I would never say, I would never go against the
We would never say that. We love the WHO. We love the CDC. They're the brilliant, best organizations in the world.
Yes. And I would definitely not detail this in my new book, which is coming out at the end of the year. Which
we'll definitely get Mark's book, please. There's no details about this in it, but get the book. Sorry, go ahead.
But she says that it's an ethical can of worms, and it's like going down the road of eugenics, because if they admit that that's what's causing it, then they're going to have to admit that it's unnatural, that sort of wires are crossed, and then that puts the whole transgender ideology into a very difficult light, because if you admit that nature has designed human beings, God, whatever you want to call it, a certain way, and because of certain endocrine disruptors, that certain neurological pathways got kind of hooked up a little bit backwards or the opposite way, it's a big can of worms. So I don't know how you put the toothpaste back in the tube at this point, but remember, it wasn't that long ago that doctors were saying that smoking cigarettes was healthy for you. And, if you go way, way back, I mean, you look at some of the crazy stuff that humans have done throughout history, like in China, they were doing the foot binding. Have you ever heard about this, where they would tie ropes around women's feet so that the feet wouldn't grow? And they thought that was normal and attractive. And so we did get through that. So maybe we can get through this, but how you can't talk about certain issues with the vaccine, so it's hard to talk about certain issues with atrazine and the BPA, and there's even BPA in clothes.
What?
To their credit, California, because it's a plastic, right? So it's in a lot of...
Wow, Mark, our stream just went off right in the middle of the show. Or it froze or something. As soon as you said gay bomb, the stream froze for some reason. I don't know. We're still recording, so just keep going, but that's funny. Hope we didn't get kicked off YouTube. We love YouTube. Thank you, CDC.
Remember some of the revelations that Edward Snowden revealed?
Get your hand off the button, Jimmy. I can't hear Mark. Sorry, Mark. What were you saying?
Remember when Edward Snowden revealed all the NSA documents and how the NSA is spying on us? Basically confirmed what a lot of us, conspiracy theorists were talking about for years. But he also confirmed that they have tools within YouTube where they can suppress videos, they can make them go viral, they control, they can, it's basically Operation Earnest Voice, which the Twitter files admitted is happening. They didn't use that term, where the government has special software to create sock puppet accounts so that they can, troll and bot and things like that. So it's a mess. It's a mess, man. But, we're going to have to take, it's just going to take somebody with guts. I mean, you're starting to see certain issues being addressed by people who would never talk about them. Anti-whiteism, anti-white racism, black crime. Some of the folks over at the Daily Wire are kind of pushing the envelope a little bit now that certain information is, obvious to everyone about demographic changes and white people becoming a minority. And, now the vaccine is a little bit safer to talk about for some people to, address certain things. So BPA, atrazine poisoning, I think, is the big missing piece that people are not addressing, because you can't just deny and not affirm the people's gender identity dysphoria without addressing the ultimate cause, if it's not, at least in whole, due to a social contagion, or like what Freud actually talked about, like a disruption of what he called the Oedipus complex, which had to do with a child's development being disrupted, about which parent they identify with. It gets very complicated with the development of a child, but it's a mess. But what would I know? I'm just a guy in my kitchen on a laptop
with millions of subscribers and supporters. But hey, you're not just a guy. But one guy who is just a guy, he just runs a social media here. He's a handsome fella, nice guy. But his name's Logan Hall. He's with us right now, and Logan is a diehard fan of yours. So I let him on the show, Mark. This guy loves your work. You get one question to Mark Dice. Do not mess this up, dude.
Oh, wow. That's tough. I only get one?
Well, you can do two if it's a good first one.
When did you
I already hate it.
Okay. Here it is. Do you think we win the meme war of 2024? I think a lot of 2024 comes.
You are an expert memer.
Oh, of course. The left still can't meme. That's a meme in and of itself. Some of the new memers that have come forward are absolutely incredible with the deep fake technology. Look at C3P meme, who's doing incredible work. He's the guy who put Joe Biden's face on the weirdo who was talking about drinking Bud Light. He's got another one that he just did where he put...
Mark, wait, I got to cut you off. What about these freaking Twitter payments? Is that all a scam? Because, dude, you could be one of the highest paid guys in there, but you're anti-Twitter in a way. I know you have a Twitter, but you don't really like using it because it's kind of so... I mean, you've expressed it better than me, but Twitter is a hellscape. But what do you think about all these creators getting $10,000 a month now?
I think the payments are going to get cut. That's as more people get a part of the payment system. Obviously, that pie is going to get cut into smaller pieces. And yeah, I haven't used Twitter. I haven't tweeted for over a year now. And I support Elon Musk. I think what he's doing is great. He's got some serious downsides. Despite being a free speech advocate, his free speech absolutist.
No Alex Jones.
Still, obviously, he hasn't allowed Alex Jones. Still hasn't let Gavin McInnes on there. Some other people, high profile, controversial people. You're not supposed to talk about that, have been banned and still haven't been restored. But I just don't use Twitter because, especially as a news personality, as you can attest to, it sucks you in, and that's what it's designed to do. And so for me, I write books. I don't write tweets. I'm finishing a new book that's going to be out at the end of the year. Unfortunately, there's not going to be an audio book for it because I can't read my own book and have those sound bites out there because...
Let me read it. What do you mean? Let me read your book, Mark. What the heck? I'll let the sound bites out there. I don't care how controversial it is.
Well, it's just, and it's not that it's like sensational and hateful and whatever. It's just there's certain topics that are very difficult to talk about. And just me quoting other people, if I were to quote certain people, then people take that quote out of context. And I did have a voice guy contact me and audition all the stuff for doing the audiobook for the other ones, but that's a whole other story. But it's going to be fantastic. But the meme war, of course, we won the meme war in 2016. We won it in 2020. We will always win the meme war because we're more creative. Conservatism is the counterculture. I think I've maybe seen a couple, literally like 2 or 3 funny memes from the left, but I can't think of any left meme accounts. Of course we're going to win. And now with Twitter being freer speech, and have you noticed how the algorithm has been so changed? Remember how for years, and this is one of my beefs with Elon, he hasn't released any Twitter files about the manipulation of the trending list. Okay, so they released internal communications and people, discussing who should be banned and, whatever. But they have not released the internal communications about the manipulation of the top trending list because they would create self-fulfilling prophecies by literally manually inserting topics into the trending list. People would think that's the most talked about topic. People start tweeting about it. It becomes the most talked about topic. So have you noticed how now the trending list, even the For You list, but the other list as well, just the general trending list, doesn't have all of those social justice buzzwords, those fake LGBTQ holidays, all of that crap is gone, but that part of the Twitter files has never been released. So I'm going to have to start maybe tweeting to Elon or sort of, me, I work a little behind the scenes. I kind of plant seeds, people have to go and contact some people to try to get them to address that with Elon, because I think the public should know how manipulated that platform was. So with that platform being free, with Rumble being a viable alternative to YouTube, and there have been many others which have tried, and even like BitChute it's there. People can get some solid traffic over there. VidMe, I don't know if you remember this, years ago, tried and failed. Rever was another one that tried. There's been other ones that tried and failed. Break, I think. Vimeo is, not really kind of the same as more of like long form documentary. People can pay to, purchase sort of pay-per-view documentaries and movies and things like that. But there was never a viable alternative to YouTube. They never got what they call the network effect, where like none of the big names would go to a platform, right? So Rumble's got the big names. They got the money. They're traded on the stock exchange. They have a $2.5 billion market cap now. A lot of big names over there. Pretty good viewership over there. So with Rumble, with Twitter, with True Social, with Gab. People write off Gab as, oh, it's just a niche market, and True Social, just a niche market. But you know what? There's still tremendous followings over there. And my engagement on Gab and True Social is pretty solid. I mean, it's not what people outside of the ecosystem would think. So I'm excited for the meme war. It's going to be entertaining. And I go by the Breitbart doctrine of politics is downstream from culture. And if we can change the culture, we can change the political landscape. But the left has taken control of the mainstream media, academia, all the big tech platforms, the legal system. So it's an uphill battle. But I think whoever it turns out to be is the nominee at the end of this mess. Hopefully it'll be Trump. You never know. I mean, he could have a health issue as well. Biden could have a health issue. Gavin Newsom could come in, get in. If Trump has an issue, he could, have to duck out.
Anything can happen.
Nobody knows. I mean, whoever thinks that they know is going to predict it is going to basically just be, guessing. And someone will get their guess correct, and then they'll pat themselves on the back for the next 4 years about how it is that they called it. But we're in uncharted territory, man, and it's going to be stressful. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be dangerous. But it's going to be crazy. I think.
Just hope we survive. Okay, Mark, before you go and tell us about your book, I was just thinking, we talked about censorship. These video podcasts, you get censored so fast. But an audio-only podcast, you can almost go on an audio-only podcast and put it on like I'm sure people do get kicked out of, iTunes and stuff like that. But that's kind of like the last bastion of free speech where I guess it doesn't even get that censored. But is the book even a more, is that even a better place for free speech than even an audio podcast, in your opinion?
But there are books that have been banned by Amazon, and not just books about transgenderism, okay? So like in 2018 or 2019, there was a book about transgenderism that was banned, a kid's book called No Dress for Timmy, and it was about a kid who wouldn't go along with it. Nobody really noticed. Nobody said anything. It was never really covered in the news. Then the When Harry Became Sally was banned a couple years ago. That became headline news. You had members of Congress denouncing it. But there have been other books that have been banned as well, talking about certain demographic changes and certain
replacement theory. Is that what we're insinuating? And
not even that. Not even that far.
Crime rates and stuff like that. Maybe Mark and stuff like that.
In a sense, there was a book about what's called white identity, which is white people sort of identifying as a racial group by a guy named.
I identify as black. That's why I say the N-word all the time. But yeah,
sometimes I do too. I identify as Chinese because I'm a big fan of Bruce Lee. But there have been books that have quietly been banned. And there's a subsection in my book that details a lot of those. Like Tommy Robinson, the activist over in the UK.
He's awesome.
His book was banned, called Muhammad's Quran, okay, because it was deemed Islamophobic. And so other books about other certain groups of people have been banned as well.
Yeah.
So far, a handful of them. But for the most part, books, it's the ultimate taboo to not ban books, but there have been, and they're starting down that road. But you are right about the podcast, though, because we're on YouTube. YouTube has the most sophisticated AI system in the world. They scan everything that's said in a video. They detect certain keywords. Then they'll remove content for that. But I don't know if Spotify and iTunes have those same kinds of systems. They might just rely on mass flagging. So you're right. I think podcasts, one of the safer ones, but books, very safe. But still not completely safe, as I mentioned, and as I will detail in my book, which isn't going to come out until like the end of the year. But it's coming down to I'm putting the final rewrite and finishing touches on it.
And you've had your books are great. I mean, literally talking about the occultism and Hollywood and basically everything that what is it? The Hollywood is about the holly is named after the holly tree, which is made from the wand of a witch. And you kind of talk about the brainwashing and about how they use the media in Hollywood to control us.
Well, not only that, and I do have a bachelor's degree in communication, so I'm a credentialed media analyst. But, I do talk about a lot of issues regarding Hollywood that people don't know. And I mean, that's like kind of one aspect where you kind of get into weird symbology and the occult symbology. But I mean, I'm talking about there are lobbying agencies in Hollywood, just like there is in Washington, D.C., where if you want a bill to be passed or something, you go and hire these lobbyists to go and then try to, wine and dine and schmooze these members of Congress to get your bill introduced, to get them to support it, right? So there are lobbying agencies, they're called social impact agencies, or SIA, in Hollywood, where groups go and hire them, and then they wine and dine the writers and the producers and the studio heads in order to get their propaganda inserted into shows and into movies. And then that's one aspect of it. Planned Parenthood has an entire division dedicated to reaching out to Hollywood studios to try to incorporate pro-abortion messages into shows. They have script ideas. I mean, it's so hardcore. Same thing with advertising agencies. So, it's not a coincidence that all of these major brands are coming out with woke advertisements over the last few years. There are these leftist LGBT lobbying organizations like the Human Rights Organization, which sounds like an ordinary lobbying or ordinary group, like, oh yeah, I support human rights, right? But they're a radical LGBTQ extremist lobbying organization. So they go and hire these social impact agencies to lobby the advertising firms and the big Fortune 500 companies to then start inserting these social justice messages into their advertisements. So like when you really look like behind the scenes, there's a whole mechanism going on. So it's not just like a coincidence. It's not just all of these people just having this idea to use their position to promote leftist ideology. There is an engine behind it that's driving it, that's pulling the strings and reaching out behind the scenes in order to literally push this agenda, just like the lobbyists in Washington, D.C. lobby congressmen to try to get their bills drawn up and put before the lawmakers to get voted on.
Well, it's a coordinated effort of control, and they got us basically, signed, sealed, and delivered. We'll say whatever. We'll believe whatever the TV tells us. So thank you, Mark, for being the leader of the counterculture, and thank you for all the help. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I know you're busy making time to come on my show, and all the support you give me. I just know that I owe you for life. Okay, I'm indebted to you. I'm your prison bitch, as they would say. Whatever you need, I'll go steal Twinkies or whatever you need, Mark. Don't be afraid to ask.
All I want you to do is go to the event that we talked about and just do what you do. So keep in touch, man. It's great to see your success. You're a cultural weapon. And it's great to see you unleash and getting the recognition that you deserve. So great talking with you, bro.
All because of you, Mark. You were the first one that shared my viral video where I had the stupid mask on. So seriously, that helped my channel grow. And it set off a chain of events that's why we're here today. So like I said, we'll talk after the show because we got to end the show in 5 minutes. You're the man, Mark. Talk to you soon.
Keep it up, bro. See ya.
My grind so refined, I got no time for no games. Ask yourself